everyone, my name is Aarifa from AGS, only destination for learning, a newly initiated YouTube channel. So, as I have informed you earlier, I will do the subjects science and social of 9th standard, and now I am moving on to the 10th standard social science, especially with the part of history. See, in your history, the very first chapter is the rise of nationalism in Europe. What is this word called nationalism? What is the background or what is the history of this nationalism in Europe? That we shall study in this chapter. See, the word nationalism refers to the unique identity of the people, maybe with respect to the culture, with respect to the language, or with respect to their identity in the entire world. A uniqueness, this is defined as a nationalism, and also a belongingness of a person about his nation. This is referred as a nationalism, and the very first idea of nationalism, it took its birth in France during the French Revolution. See, you know that from your previous knowledge of 9th standard, French Revolution, it broke out in the year of 1789, and this French Revolution is itself gave or paved the paths for the entire democratic struggles across the entire world. Whatever nations or whichever countries they fought for their democracies, their inspiration was this French Revolution, which took place in 1789. So let us have a brief look about this French Revolution. See, the idea of nationalism, it started initially in France during 1789, and the revolution, it ended after overthrowing the existing kings or the absolute monarchies and giving the entire rights to the French people. The democratic rights were given to these French people by overthrowing the absolute monarchies, and they had their uniqueness, they had their identities with the tricolor national flag with the colors blue, white and red. They had a single flag to entire population, they had a common language called French, and they had unique weights and measuring systems. Everything throughout the nation, they used to follow certain thing which was in common among all. So there was a flag for them, there was a language, there was a particular nation with its physical boundaries called France. So the nationalist ideas were very much enough, or the nationalist ideas they had in France when compared to the rest of the European nations. Apart from all these, even these French people, they had certain things which the rest of the Europe didn't have. That is, the election system was existing, though monarchs were there before the revolution. National Assembly was there in France. See, I think you remember, the king, before overthrowing the monarch completely, there was a National Assembly which could control the monarch itself, isn't it? I'll just give a glance about that National Assembly. So this is just a mind map of this National Assembly and its function. See, before the king was completely overthrown, France became a constitutional monarchy, where a National Assembly had a right to control the king as well as his ministers. See, entire population of France was not allowed to vote the king or elect the electors, but there were a group of people called active citizens who were above 25 years, and these they would elect electors. In turn, electors elect the National Assembly, who will control or who exercise certain amount of control over the king. So, before the idea of democracy or before the idea of revolution completely took its shape, National Assembly was existing in France, and by looking at the ideologies of France and developments in France after the revolution, remaining or the rest of the citizens in Europe, they started to form different clubs like Jacobin clubs of France. I think you remember, Jacobin clubs were formed in France in order to raise the voice on behalf of the third estate people. Such clubs were formed in entire Europe to raise their voices for the democracy and to raise their voices against or for the unique identity as a nation. And the French people who got the nationalist feelings in the entire Europe for the first time, who got the ideas of democracies, they too wanted to preach those to the rest of the Europe, and these French armies, they set out a campaign into the entire European continent over the different ideologies of this French Revolution. And Napoleon Bonaparte, who became the monarch of France after the revolution in the year of around 1804, he had a vast territory. With his vast empire, he wanted to take over the control of different neighboring nations like Belgium, Switzerland, and various other countries he wanted to take over. And in the process of that, he did several reforms he brought, like the Civil Code of 1804. See, what is this Civil Code of 1804? Or this code is even called as a Napoleonic Code. Under this Civil Code of 1804, initially he took away the birth privileges of the clergymen as well as nobility. See, I have explained you in the system of division of estates, clergy and nobility, they enjoyed the system, or they enjoyed the birth privileges which made them to exempt from all kinds of taxes. Only the third estate was supposed to pay the taxes, but not the first and second. So he took away those birth privileges and he established equality among the entire population. This is the first one. Whereas the second one is he abolished the feudal systems. That is, apart from the division of estates, even certain taxes were imposed upon the third estate like tithes and tallies. I hope you remember. Tithes are the taxes which were imposed by the church upon the peasants. Tallies are the types of taxes which are imposed by the state over the common commodities like salt and tobacco. He removed such feudal systems, and transport and communication systems were developed completely. So it was a most important decision made for the traders and businessmen, and for which he got a large approval from the population of most of the European countries. He liberalized the trade, he improved the transport and communication systems like no other emperor of France. And he also introduced the standard weights and measurements across the France. Wherever, see, earlier there were different weighing systems were there in France, but soon after Napoleon came into power, standard weights were introduced which were valid throughout the nation. They had the same weighing system which helped the businessmen and traders to have a very good trade in the Napoleon's period. Initially, the cities like, or the countries like Switzerland, Holland, and many other nations, they saw these French troops as the people who came to give certain liberty to those people. Initially, they saw these French troops as the liberalizing forces, but soon their enthusiasm, it turned into a hostility, because apart from doing all such reforms, his reforming measures did not match with the political freedom. He increased the taxes, and he took away the basic idea which made the France most popular, that is democracy was totally demolished, and people were forced to pay the higher taxes. And along with all these, censorship was introduced by Napoleon. See, censorship is nothing but no media or no newspapers can write something against the Napoleon Bonaparte. whatever news they wanted to publish, it should be only published with the permission of this Napoleon Bonaparte. This is called as censorship. See, in movies and all, you might have seen, before a movie is released in theaters, they should get a censorship certificate. That is, it should have a censorship certificate so that it could be released to the public. So such a censorship was introduced by this Napoleon, and so that whatever newspapers, whatever media was existing, that should function only with the permission of this Napoleon Bonaparte. And the zeal and zest of Napoleon Bonaparte to conquer the entire Europe overweight in than these reforms or the administrative reforms he introduced. Thus, he couldn't become a successful emperor in the history of France, but the rest of the Europe, it got certain inspiration from France in order to have the idea of nationalism in their countries too. So what happened in the rest of the Europe with all the developments which took place in France, that we shall see in next video. Hope you understood the initial introduction about the French Revolution and its impact upon the different countries of Europe. If you find my video most useful, please like my video, share it and subscribe my channel for the recent updates. Thank you all. Me signing off, Aarifa from AGS, only destination for learning. Thank you once again.